I decided to leave it about 12 hours or so in the hope of allowing myself to calm down from what was a very surprising head loss during last night's Champions League game against Bodo Glimt. For those of you joining on my watch along last night, I can only apologize. I'm genuinely shocked at how angry I was. But the reality is that performance by Tottenham was borderline embarrassing. To be given a lesson on how to play simple, brave, passing football by a team who I dare say collectively earn about 50 times less than Spurs do was genuinely shocking to me. No Spurs player was willing or able to put their foot on the ball or work out on the fly how to counteract Bodo's counter-pressing game. And that, to me, is a big worry. In today's episode, I'll give you my more considered thoughts on last night and go through Thomas Frank's post-match quotes in what I fear will be a pretty somber daily Tottenham news. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching and listening wherever you are. If you're on YouTube, please do give this video a like. Please do press subscribe. And once again, I have been nominated for 2 awards in the Football Content Awards, the most prestigious awards that there are in this industry. And if you like my stuff, I would love it if you would give me a vote. Details of how are in the description box below. Like I said, nominated for 2 awards. So if you'd give me a vote in both those awards, that would be amazing. But let's get started. And like I said, I want to give kind of my main takeaways, my more considered thoughts on the Bodo Glimt 2 Tottenham Hotspur 2 game. And this is going to sound very much like we lost that game, and we didn't. And I guess it is important to remember that. The players did show some desire and some drive to get back in the game. The 3rd game in a row that they've had to do that, which frankly to me is worrisome in itself. I'm going to start by saying we all complained a lot under Ange that he didn't rotate enough, and that's why we got so many injuries. And now, frankly, I'm going to complain about the rotation from Thomas Frank. But to me, it did seem like he played at least as strong a side as he did last night against Doncaster, the League One side at home in the Carabao Cup last week. And to me, nothing has changed in that Spurs really struggle when they play these mix and match sides. You know, kind of first team players in the most part, but 3 or 4 kind of squad players, or 6 first team players and 5 squad players. And that's been a case for years. And to me, that shows a problem with recruitment. And I think it shows like almost an overall bigger picture issue with Spurs in that because Tottenham keep kind of yo-yoing from one style of manager to another. So, you know, from Conte to Conte, very pragmatic, very defensive, to Ange, gung-ho. Now back to Thomas Frank, who's trying to make it more pragmatic, trying to make us harder to beat, trying to make us harder to concede, for us to concede goals. But the problem is that each time you're buying different players. You're buying different styles of player. And Tottenham are still left with a mishmash of players who are suited to a bit of pragmatism, a bit of defensive work, and some who are not. And frankly, last night, we didn't seem suited to anything. We really didn't. And I think the problems are going to continue as Thomas Frank attempts to rotate. That is the reality, because we are going to need to rotate in the hope that we just keep our first team players fit. I mean, Romero wasn't fit last night, but Van de Ven thankfully was and put in a good performance. Hopefully, as Thomas Frank said, the Romero issue and him not traveling to that game is precautionary, and he will be available against Leeds at the weekend. But actually, if there's anything there, and I've said this before on these videos, so apologies if you heard it time and time again, but Romero's performances before international breaks have been so poor that I would actually say to him, listen, if you've got a little niggle, you just sit it out before the Argentina game. But to say that we missed his ability and bravery on the ball last night would be an understatement. We had basically what seemed like for the first 65 minutes of the game or 60 minutes of the game, we had nobody on the pitch who was willing to put their foot on the ball. At a push, Pedro Porro, but Porro had no one around him who was showing. There was no movement off the ball until Simons and Kudus and Archie Gray came on. And in fact, maybe also I'm being unfair to Lucas Bergwall. He attempted to pass and move every so often. But it was Archie Gray who I think mostly in that game when he came on started trying to stretch the Bodo Glimt backline, giving the ball and then making runs in behind. And that's what the equaliser came from. But why did it take so long? The players seemed kind of petrified to move off the ball last night, kind of terrified of making a mistake. And when you're terrified of making a mistake in games like that, you make mistakes by not being brave. That's how I feel about it. And like I said in the opening, Bodo Glimt just showed how easy it can be. And I get it. Listen, they play on that Astro every week. They train on it every day, right? And they douse it with water. And what happened all the time, and I guess happens with a lot of their opposition all the time, is the players will rush in to try and press, but Bodo know that on the kind of sodden pitch, players are not wearing studs long enough to grip and turn quickly. So what happens a lot, if you noticed yesterday, that even Bodo's centre halves, when they had a player really coming in to press them, they would just take a touch away from them, beat them as that player's going, skidding the wrong way, and bring it out and then play a pass. Tottenham did not realize how to do that. Tottenham were not able to do that. And Bodo just made them look, honestly, at times, I was shouting and screaming about it on the watch along, but they made Spurs look like an under-10 team. It was that bad. And I'll say again, I know we did draw. We got a result. Some of you will say, oh, you're being so negative. You got to draw and the Champions League is hard. It is hard. But don't forget, we played Bodo Glimt, 6 months ago over 2 legs? And they didn't really bother us. We were much more willing and able to play a bit of football and play it around them and make them think about defending as well than they had to at all last night. Certainly in the first 60 minutes anyway. I'll go on to this. But once he brought Simons and Kudus and Archie Gray on, Spurs did then finally put some pressure on them. And it took, that took 60 minutes, 65 minutes. And that's because, Frank was rotating to try and keep players fresh and to try and stop them from getting injured. But I just think in a game like that, when you know how Bodo Glimt are going to play and you know that they just play little triangles, little 1 touch here, 2 touch there, round the corner, triangles. They always had players around the ball. And as a result, Spurs needed to see that the only way that we would put pressure on them and get them worried about defending and maybe conceding goals themselves is to have all of our ball players on the pitch as well. And then when he did bring those players on after 60 minutes, that's what happened. And we pushed them back. But it took too long. Another comment about, the issue with, the flip-flopping of managerial styles. The one thing that I think should remain a constant with players that Tottenham bring in is they have to be comfortable on the ball. They have to be able to take the ball on the half turn. We need to stop buying players who can't take the ball on the half turn. Brennan Johnson, I'm afraid, I'm going to come to him. I'll come to him now, seeing as I'm saying it. But Brennan Johnson is a player who can only play in straight lines forward or straight lines back, unwilling and unable to take the ball on the half turn. And therefore, playing him in a game like last night, he was completely invisible. And I think he's in big trouble at Spurs. I really do. I've supported him the whole time. I like him. Johnson again, ole ole. He's done huge things for us. Top scorer last season. But we cannot afford to have players who can only play in straight lines. And I can't see Brennan Johnson's role at Spurs under Thomas Frank being anything other than a super sub, a sub who comes on when the opposition are losing and are kind of trying to come at us. And so there's so much space for him to run into on the transition. That's where I think he can be lethal. But this is a £50 million player. He's a £50 million player. And Spurs has paid £50 million for a player who can only run in straight lines. And I'm sorry, we have to stop doing that. We have to. Johan Lange, Fabio Paratici, and Thomas Frank all need to get together and say, we're only now going to buy players who are comfortable on the ball and able to take it on the half turn. Because I promise you, Man City only buy players like that. Liverpool only buy players like that. And so do Arsenal, frankly. Players who can do both things, take it left or right, and who defenders can't just press in one position and one kind of body shape to make it hard. And I'll say Jed Spence again last night, playing him on the left, it made it so easy for Bodo Glimt to just press him, so he had to come inside. Those of you who are watching the watch-along will have heard me losing the plot, just going, look, we all know what's going to happen. It's going to go side to side, to side to side, and backwards, side to side, backwards, backwards, side to side, backwards. That was when we had the ball, and we rarely had the ball. And the only reason that changes when we brought on Simons, Kudus, Archie Gray, players who are comfortable on the ball, willing to take it on the half turn, be able to go left or right. We've got to stop buying players who can't do that. We really do as a medium to long-term policy. I'm going to try and find the positives now. I'm going to say this: Odebear, Bergvall, Gray. The young players. I thought, I saw some people on social media giving Odebear shade last night, but certainly in the first half, the only Tottenham player willing to take the ball in tight spaces and drive at them. Bergvall did a little bit, but he was a little bit lost in the game. All 3 central midfielders were, frankly. But Odebear took it on that left-hand side. Even if he had his back to goal, would then turn inside and take out 2 or 3 Bodo players driving into central midfield. Now, is his final ball good enough yet? No, it's not. But frankly, would I start him on the left at the moment? Yeah, I would. I would. I'd start him on the left and Kudus on the right and Simon's in the middle. Of as the 10, sorry, behind Richarlison. Rishi didn't have a great game. He got a goal just about, I think it was given as an own goal in the end. But it's not like we made him loads of chances, but we missed Dom Solanke and we're going to continue to miss Dom Solanke. And maybe there's some element where we just have to keep eking out points here and there and the odd win here and there whilst we're waiting for Solanke to come back, because we miss him big time, his hold-up play. I cannot state how much we're missing his hold-up play. In terms of the positives of Odegaard, Bergvall and Gray, I do really wonder whether Thomas Frank at some point is going to have to make the same decision that Maurizio Pochettino did. Pochettino made it about a quarter of the way into his second season. He bombed out all the older players, didn't he? Adebayor, Yunus Kabul, players like that. He bombed them out and trusted in the youth. And I wonder if at some point, maybe it'll take a similar amount of time and it'll be, some way into the beginning of next season where he's just like, actually, I have to trust Bergvall and Gray in central midfield. I have to trust Odegaard in central midfield. Wide left, and just start playing the kids, because I have to say, and I'll use Bentancur as an example last night, he looked a bit afraid. He looked a bit afraid last night, and we can't afford that anymore. Another positive, Roma lost 6-1. I was saying during the watch-along last night that Roma lost 4-0 there under Mourinho. They didn't. They lost 6-1 there at Bodo Glimt, and Spurs didn't. And that's where I'll come back to some fight and some desire. We showed that. We stuck in the game, and we fought back. Roma lost 6-1 there. Maybe it will prove last night to be a brilliant point in the end. There does seem to be some fight. Our next Champions League game is Monaco away, another difficult one. So important that we got that point last night. That's in a few weeks' time. Just want to say, how much do we miss James Maddison, Deki Kulusevski? It's ridiculous. Maddison's going to be out all season. Gutting, because those options, just in those games last season, certainly in the first one, I think Madders was fit for. But those games, not just against Bodo, but a lot of games last season when we were struggling to get on the ball, Madders would just come deep and pick it up and take responsibility. And we miss him so much. And then finally, just on the positives, big night for Mickey van der Ven. Didn't let us down, wearing the captain's armband for the first time. Thomas Frank came out afterwards, said he is in the leadership group, and he put in a really good game. He really did. And, we're very lucky to have him. Okay, let's go into some of the quotes from Thomas Frank after the game. He was talking to Alistair Gold. Alistair asked him, how do you analyze that one? Obviously, the characters to battle back, but maybe fortunate to still be in the position to do so. And obviously, if you don't follow Alistair Gold on X or his YouTube channel, make sure you do. He really is the GOAT of Tottenham journalism. Thomas said this, I think definitely big character to fight back. I think that's hugely important in any team that they have. From they kept running, keep fighting, keep doing the right thing. What was the right thing? I mean, running, yeah. And also, I think we, even after the 2-0, I think we're in a strange way better. Maybe because Bodo dropped back, maybe we took more initiative. Sometimes that's the momentum of the game. But I felt that we kept doing the right thing. We kept moving the ball, kept reducing the situation from the side, and showed big character to get back into the game, which I'm very, very pleased with. But huge praise to Bodo. I think until the 2-0, they were the best team today. Understatement, Thomas. I'm glad he said it, but an absolute understatement. I think after that, the game changed a bit, and I think we got more on top. And of course, scored it to make it 2-1 and then the equaliser. So they just showed exactly what I expected from them today. Well, what he's missing there is that's when he brought on Simons and Kudus and Archie Gray, players who can play with the ball. He said, of course, I hope we could have done a little bit more in the first half, got a little bit more into the high pressure in situations. And I would say, especially on the ball, I felt we could and should have kept the ball better in situations. He mentioned there the high pressure. Our press was about 5 yards off last night. They would get the ball and then, 3-4 seconds later, a player would kind of half-heartedly go to them. When Thomas Frank started at the beginning of the season, I noticed that our press was much better than under Ange. It really slipped into kind of the Ange press yesterday. The Ange press slightly worryingly after I felt they'd lost confidence in Ange. He went on to say both a little bit of structure and a little bit of bravery, a bit on the day where you just need better touches, better decisions, better passes. Well, that's fair to say. There was none of that. He was asked, that was the third time in the last 4 games you've conceded first and then come back and stage dramatic equalizers. Why do you think you're struggling to control games in the beginning at the moment? He said that can be various reasons. I think against Wolves, we had no problem controlling at the beginning. I think we were by far the best team against Wolves in the first half. I wouldn't say by far, but we did make chances. We should have scored that goal from Kudus' header. And actually, I was watching a replay of that Kudus header that Johnson tipped onto the bar against Wolves. And it just reminded me how we took for granted Harry Kane and Dele Alli in those situations as finishers. Both Dele Alli and Harry Kane in that situation that Kudus found himself in would have headed the ball back the way it came across the keeper, so the keeper had no chance. But Kudus, tried to head it that way, and it was a spectacular save by Johnson, but it's the only way he had a chance at all. If he just kind of let the ball hit his head and go back the way it had come, the cross had come from, we would have scored that. And it just really reminded me how lucky we were with Dele Alli and Harry Kane. He goes on to say this: I think Brighton was a different game. I think also we were by far the best team in the first half, just conceded one fairly well-played goal. And as we talk about a game, a goal that should have been conceded. Today I felt we struggled in the first half, so I think that's the only time we struggled in the 3 games against a very good Bodo team. Up here, a lot of teams will struggle when they play against them here. So it's just fair play to Bodo. I wonder, I do think it's true. I think it'll be interesting to see how Bodo do in their home games in the Champions League this season. Obviously, I think one of the reasons I was surprised by how much better than us they were last night is because, frankly, we were better than them in the 2 legs in the Europa League semi-final last year. So I wonder if maybe Bodo choked a little at the pressure of those games. But I think there is a possibility that having dominated them in both those games really at the end of last season, that Tottenham came to this game with a little bit more complacency and thought we'd roll them over, both in terms of on the pitch, but also as a fan base. I remember before that semi-final last year, there were just so many stories and podcasts and journalists and, and Bodo fans and everyone telling us how we were going to struggle against Bodo, how good they were at home and how every team struggles, and we didn't. And this time we really did. And I think we maybe fell into the trap of thinking it would be easier than it was. Thomas was asked, was it the plan in the first half to sit back and try to get them on the counter, or was that kind of imposed on you by the way they played? He said, I think that was what we wanted. Hopefully also you saw that we went high pressure sometimes. It was not that we never went high pressure. So the plan was to go both into the high pressure, which we did on several occasions, and also succeed with those situations. Then there were times when we were a little bit more banked in. You know, exactly that we were 4 months ago, because they're very, very good at what they're doing. And then I think the counters should have been a little bit better. I think the main thing was when we were on the ball, we threw the ball away too quickly. Yeah, because we were never on the ball, because when we got the ball, we were so scared. And Thomas Frank talks a lot about wanting the ball to go in behind the channels. But I think Tottenham under him have now kind of taken it on too much. And the fullbacks especially, well, not really Jed Spence, actually, because he's so right-footed, he always has to come back and give it to Mickey van der Ven to whack it down the line. But just so many occasions where we just hit these long, high balls in the channels, and nobody was there to chase them. Nobody was there to win the first ball. And it was just giving it back, like you said, just giving it back to Bodo Glimt every single time. Thomas was asked, there's been a lot of discussions about VAR in Norwegian football in the last couple of years. What's your reflection on today's situation? He said, that's a good question. I'm of the opinion that VAR, it's here, and I definitely know there was a vote in Norway who tried to vote against it and get rid of it. I don't think that's possible in the Premier League and the Champions League. So when it's not possible to get rid of it, I'm a little bit like, okay, deal with it. It is what it is. I think in some occasions it's good, but you get hopefully the correct decisions when you don't get it normally. But of course, there's others where it's two. You can actually discuss that one goal got disallowed and actually the other one, they also looked into the equaliser. Let me just give my opinion on that. The one that was disallowed on Mickey van der Ven, I guess by the letter of the law, it was a foul because he did pull his shirt. Firstly, I don't know why he's pulling his shirt, because the defender was getting nowhere near it. And actually, the only chance, if he had got near it, is he might put it in his own net. That's when the ball ended up hitting the back post. But secondly, Mickey van der Ven was being fouled himself. So someone had two arms around him. So the ref could have disallowed the goal and given a penalty, but of course that's never going to happen. And I just think if the ref doesn't give that on the pitch, then that is not a clear and obvious error as far as I'm concerned. And then the second one, which was for the equaliser, it clearly wasn't a clear and obvious error or an offside because it took 4 or 5 minutes to look at it. And that is supposed to be the rule. And it's VAR trying to re-referee games. It's ridiculous. Frank went on to say both of them without VAR had just been goals. So we would have scored 2 goals. So that would have been favouring us because they were so 50-50 even. I think he's saying the same thing basically. But I think the one where you oversee a clear penalty or clear red card, that's why I think VAR is very good. I kind of agree with that. And obviously goal line technology is brilliant as well. The next question was, Bodo were quite dominant, especially in the first half, maybe until the second goal. Were there any parts of the game that surprised you? He said, I think they did exactly what I expect them to do in terms of how they wanted to play out, what they wanted to do, how they wanted to put on pressure. I think the only little tweak was they were a little bit more flexible in the midfield rotation and a little bit more with the wingers coming inside. So that was a bit more flexible compared to, let's say, the last game. So that was a tweak that maybe created a few problems in the first half. I think a little less in the second half. Even that they scored, when they scored the goals, there were various reasons, because actually the way we wanted to press, we just decided not to do it at the 1-0 goal, even if it's a fantastic finish from Ho. Well, I'd say this, we didn't close down the shots for either of the goals. Pedro Porro, unfortunately, did not have his best game defensively. He was found wanting. But I also think that's because Brennan Johnson wasn't good enough helping him out. You know, he was doing doggy runs, Brennan Johnson, but he never really looks like he cares. He never properly puts in and tries to throw himself in front of the opposition player to stop crosses or stop shots. We were poor there. Just before I move on to carry on with some more of this, guys, once again, thanks so much for watching and listening. Hope you're enjoying the episode. Do give this video a like on YouTube. The more likes we get, the more Tottenham fans will see this in their suggested videos. Also, do subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed for daily Tottenham news. I'm getting close to 20,000 subscribers now. Do join the community. And like I said at the top, I've been nominated for 2 football content awards. If you like my stuff, do give me a nomination and vote for me. Details of how are in the description box below. The next question was, with no Romero today, you picked Mickey van der Ven as your captain. Can you talk us through your reasoning behind that, how you felt he performed, and is he now part of the leadership group? He said, yes, I've made a decision. I haven't told the players the decision on the leadership group yet, and that will happen on Thursday. So I made the decision, but it's probably pretty obvious he will be. He's impressed me a lot as a player, but also as a communicator on the pitch, and his show of character. I think he was good today. The next question was, last time Tottenham came here, they dominated in a physical way. Today, we didn't see that same physical domination. What do you think went wrong in that sense game? Great question. He said, Thomas Frank said, it's a good question, and I agree. We didn't see it in the same way. Bodo were a little bit more aggressive in the duels than we were. Were we less? I don't know. I probably need to revisit the game to see, but what I would say is that visually, looking with my eyes, it looked more even, trending to Bodo being more strong in certain duels. Yeah, we could have been more physical with them, but we weren't. We were. I tell you, we were 5 yards off them every single time. They just played triangles around us. Unacceptable. That's why I had my almost generational head loss. It really did look like kind of under 16s versus under 10s. He was next asked about so many games coming up thick and fast and having to juggle a lot of different players as well as having injuries. He says, he was asked, are you struggling to find the right blend? I think it's too early to judge, in my opinion. You can say we didn't play our best first half today, but I think I made it very clear from the beginning. I have a big respect for Bodo, and everyone should have, for what they do and what Kjetil Knutsen is doing. I agree. That manager, they play unlike anyone. They're so good. It'd be really fascinating to see if he gets a bigger job, whether he can take a team who don't play on that pitch and they can do it the same way. Because there is something incredibly fast about that pitch that enables that little 1-touch and 2-touch round the corner play. And like I said, making the opposition kind of skid out of position. But he has done amazing work there. Frank went on to say, I think it's also fair to say we didn't touch the ball in the first half last year either. It was still 0-0 at half time. I think they were slightly better today in the first half, Bodo. So that's more respect to them. I think it's also fair to say that it went quite well against Wolves in the first half. All right. So I know that's a bigger perspective. I think overall, you can say a lot of games that go to starting 11 you can find at a certain stage. That's something I'm looking into, which is normal. New coach, new players, and we still need a little bit of rotation. Yeah, I think that comes back to what I was saying earlier about maybe at some point he's going to have to throw out some of the older players and trust in the younger players and show, and let them show how hungry they are. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, because clearly Bentancur is about to sign a new contract. And I don't think Bentancur is as bad as some of the shade he's getting, but at some point we're going to have to try and find our way back to what we found under Pochettino, which is a team, of 11 players or 15 squad players as well, who are all willing to take the ball in tight spaces, who all know what they're doing, who are all brave and hungry and want to grow together. That's what we've got to kind of grow towards. Just a couple of bits of other news. Tottenham manager Thomas Frank apparently wants to sign his ex-Brentford defender Nathan Collins, and also Spurs have cut ties with Rothschild & Co., who Daniel Levy appointed last year to try and find potential investment, with the new hierarchy continuing to underline that they are not looking to sell the club. Really fascinating. And once again, I'll say, if they're not willing to sell, if they're not looking to sell the club, then they've got to invest massively in terms of wages and players. Be interesting to see if that happens. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching and listening. I hope you enjoyed this slightly somber daily Tottenham news. But once again, let's end by saying we got a point. We showed some desire. We go to Leeds at the weekend, and I think we need to put in a performance there and get 3 points. I really, really do. Do like this video on YouTube. Do subscribe to the channel. Give me a vote in the Football Content Awards. And do join my BigUp community as well, which is where I do all the watch-alongs. Again, check out in the description box below to find out how to do that. Enjoy your Wednesdays, guys. Come on, you Spurs.